I suspect that it's not appropriate for me to start this off with the peace greeting, so I won't. This is one of those rare times that I'm going to go ahead and address the bulk of the Western black woman, the majority. Listening to you and the things you've had to say collectively about Simone Biles and Jonathan Owens has actually illustrated to the entire world why you are not only the least married, but the most divorced out of those who are married. Now, some would say those two statistics are impossible if you don't pay attention. The most divorce means out of those who get married, you divorce the most. But out of women in general, you marry the least. This means that not only does every other group of men see you as the least desirable, and don't say that that's true for black men either, yet. Don't worry, the bulk of you are making this true. And the reactions of those of you that are not making this true are also going to illustrate why it is that this is becoming true even amongst young black boys and even a few black men that are adults, some of whom are even my age. And that is strange because amongst black men of my age group and even going down 10 years younger, I pretty much assumed that black men preferred black women. I know that we did. Now, these young black boys don't want a damn thing to do with black women, period. They don't want anything to do with any of you. Now, they will identify you by attitude. The problem is that they're later going to associate the attitude with the phenotype. And as inaccurate as that is, that's going to happen because this is a subconscious thing that people don't necessarily have the ability to control unless they make a conscious effort to do it. And the more even the innocent of you scream out, not all, I would apologize, but that burp was actually kind of a good one. It might not have even been audible through the mic. I don't know. But the windows of the car next to me just vibrated a little bit. So the reactions of some of you that had nothing to do with these things is very telling in and of itself. Those reactions in which you say, not all, in which you defend the bulk who do these things by stating that you are the exception that does not, is also a part of the problem. The innocent are not supposed to sit up and say, I didn't do it, when they're not being charged. And even the Bible says that the wicked flee when none pursueth. The wicked. It is not the innocent that flee. There's one other group that has to flee, though, when nobody pursueth. And those are the persecuted. The prosecuted may flee when somebody is pursuing. That's what the prosecution is. But the persecuted also flee. Well, hell, I'll take that back. The persecuted will flee when they are pursued, and then when they are not pursued, they will flee because of when they were. That's generally speaking black men, and not just American black men, but black men in general. How do we know this? Well, one of the ways we know is that we see how you behave when you do get with black men from other places too. You do the same thing. Now, you may start off changing for a non-Western black man, but when you get with that zaddy, that's when you change and you try to make it permanent. When it comes to that non-Western black man, eventually you're like, you know what? I ain't going to change for him either. And that's why that American lady was sitting up and saying in Ghana to her husband one night when she came home entirely too mother cuss word late, I pay you in punani. And she didn't say punani. The last I heard, that man took her to the airport and put on a flight back to the States and said, stay the hell away. I don't know how true that is, but that's what I heard. Some that are in Ghana have stated that the African-American women there can't find American brothers, and they don't want Ghanaian men, unless, of course, they're amongst the wealthiest of the Ghanaian men. But the wealthiest of the Ghanaian men don't have to settle for an American sister. And I said it just like that because this is how you are viewed. And so what's happening is that the Ghanaian women are taking on more of the ratchet attitudes, and regular men from Ghana are beginning to feel this. They told Go Black to Africa about what they were beginning to deal with. how men are becoming stressed out. And I've seen this happen even here in Saudi, to be honest. Well, these women are not terribly disrespectful. They're demanding, but they're not disrespectful. However, even the women here are pushing some of their husbands to drug use. These men are not violent, and if you hit women here in this country, you can wind up paying, that if she's your wife, you wind up owing her 50,000 riyals. And women here do have their own bank accounts, so they can sit up and actually monitor, are you paying her according to the court ruling if she takes you to the court? They can do that. The system here is fairly strong and it does work. So men here, they're not violent anyway for the most part, believe it or not, despite the stereotypes. And they do fight in the streets when they're young men and when they're teenage boys and fight in the schools and stuff. But when they get older, they're not violent. So when they're actually married, which doesn't happen when they're young in the first place, now they're already in debt because they had to pay these dowries and the economy is getting bad and their wives are not willing to graciously accept a drop in anything to do with their living standard. Daddy spoiled them back when the economy was good. Damn it, you're the husband. You're going to spoil them too. And many of them start to take the money that they do have and they put it to drug use, and then it puts the family in even worse positions. Your reactions to various things have shown, but you know what else? You take Tasha Gray, whom I mentioned in my last upload, and how she was able to sit in her damn car and say, and we know all light-skinned men act like a bunch of bitches. She sat up there and said all light-skinned men, and we all know this, like everybody's in agreement, and ain't no sisterhood called her out yet. I'm sure some individual women by now have disagreed in writing or not in writing, but the bulk. Where's the outrage that would have happened when Gilbert Arenas said what he said, if he actually said it? Where is that? Instead, the sisterhood has decided to say, well, you know, Black Twitter came and did its thing. And sure enough, it turns out that Jonathan Owens did have something to say back when Gabby Douglas was getting drugged for her edges. Wait, hold up. I don't follow gymnastics, and I knew who the heck Gabby Douglas was. So he would have heard something about Gabby, seen pictures. Social media was very active at that time. It was actually more of a novelty than what it is now. So if he did say something and that was up in that case, yeah, if he was old enough to have his own Twitter or any type of account, then he was old enough to know that was morally wrong if he said something about her edges too. However, Jonathan Owens has to grow up. He's a black man. He's not going to be allowed to remain immature and silly. Not and get to the levels at which he is in any profession. He's not allowed to. And Simone Biles, who got on the dating app because, you know what, she can't just be talking to anybody once she's famous, realized that if she was going to get even more and more and more famous in the mainstream, all that was going to do was narrow her pool. So she pretty much said, let me go ahead and even so much as give up a meat to go get this man. Because what good is success if all that's going to do is make every man ineligible? She realized the choice she was going to have to make, and she made the opposite choice. What do you do when you're generally on the upswing in any career at all? You try to get on top of the world above every man, then you sit up and say, ain't no men on my level. You were willing to compete with everybody, every other woman and man, to get to the top and above every other woman and man's head, especially every other man's head. And there's a system that was willing to help you do it. You know why they're not stopping black men from getting passports and leaving now? Because they don't mind them. They don't mind us leaving. To them, that's also another solution. All right, you know what? We don't mind. Let these brothers go. Don't matter. I worry about the day they might change their minds. But for the most part, they're pretty much saying, you know what? We're not really, the plantation's not profitable anymore. The prison's not profitable anymore. It's not that. We just don't want y'all taking it over and lording over us. So you know what? If you're going to rebel against the sisters that we put in charge over you, yes, go. This actually works out nicely. You get the hell away from us. You are the thinkers amongst your men. Yes, go. But the way that the hynocracy had nothing to say to Tasha Gray yet tells me what I need to know. Because I'm also a light-skinned man. I'm actually racially ambiguous looking. I can't wear the hairstyles Jonathan Owens has worn. I couldn't wear it back when I had hair. I don't really know if Ving Rhames did any twisted stuff. Method Man is known to not take stuff lying down, so I don't know why somebody would falsely accuse him. But if he, I mean, the other thing too is that when you don't take stuff like this lying down, that's generally a sign that you ain't doing it. As I said, the wicked flee when none pursueth. So if he were actually doing dumb stuff like what he was accused of doing back in the 90s, chances are he will be actively trying to get rid of somebody. That's the thing. When you do somebody wrong, you have to watch out. You have to watch your back all the time because you know you done them wrong. You assault somebody, goodness gracious, man, especially if you're famous, you know they can come out with this at any time. You would try to go after them. I would think, nope. He's minding his business. Some lady jumps up, points a finger at him because he lives in a jurisdiction in which this sort of thing is being encouraged and even extended. Statute of limitations being done away with so that people can press charges and sue. Method Man did this. Vin Diesel did this. But the thing is that when Vin Diesel is being accused of this, that scares the hell out of me. Because I know how you all think. I'm here, but I know how you all think. And there's some brothers over there stateside that actually do resemble him a bit more. They ain't that common, but they're there. And I wonder what the hell's going to happen to them because Tasha Grayson sat up here and said what she said. And ain't nobody said nothing. So this means that you all are comfortable saying things like this about pretty much any type of brothers for any reason, really. Just you would not come out and say that we know that all dark-skinned men, you wouldn't stereotype them vocally. You may do it in practice, but you would not stereotype them vocally, especially negatively. And you do stereotype more abundantly melanated brothers negatively, but you do it more so in practice. And even then, there's a bit of a compliment mixed in. It's like a sexual objectification. It's an insult and a compliment thrown in together. Light-skinned brothers. You mad because here he is, and he can see that he has value, and he saw value in Simone Biles too. So, and you could tell. How could you tell? Look at the footage of him at the wedding. He was crying. What are y'all going to say? He was crying because he a bitch? That's a validation of if I've ever seen one. Y'all going to say that now? He was crying because he a bitch? He scared? He weak? Or because he couldn't get nobody else? You will never be satisfied. Not only that, you'll never even be fair and honest. And when I say you, I mean the collective, the plural you. I'm not talking about every individual, obviously, but yeah, because in English, you only have you. You don't have a difference between singular you and plural you. I'm used to that being in existence in other languages that I've had to use. I've actually never learned a language that didn't have a difference except English when I think about it. Dang. So yeah, I have to say this. You will, there's not going to come a time when you are going to be fair and just with your tongue collectively. You were always, at every point, going to have something negative to say about every single one of us that manages to have a spotlight for any mother cuss word reason. You know, if he didn't have this self-esteem, if he didn't see value in himself, and this was obvious, well, hell, if he didn't, it would have been obvious, right? It would have been obvious to her. What the hell would she have done then? She would have said, you know what, you ain't the one for me. And I can't believe I gave up a swim meet to go and see your behind and go get you. That's what she would have said. And she'd have been right if he had no self-esteem, no confidence. But as Edward Allen Anderson, the Reverend Brother Pastor Deacon Dr. Bishop Hurricane Edward Allen Anderson of the New Greater Zion Valley Precious Lamb, oh Lord, hold my mule while I shout. Golden Monument of Hope Faith Tabernacle, Holy Bright Morning Star, Evangelistic Apostolic Church of Amen on the hillside in the countryside in the morning time incorporated, said this. He stated, you never see nuance or a healthy balance in anything that a black man does. You're not capable of this. This is one of the things my own mother, while she tried her best to warn me and my brother about you all, this is one of the things she was not able to put into words and articulate. I'm the one that had to say that, because when she was growing up, it wasn't that damn bad yet. Now it's exactly that goddamn effing bad. It's exactly that bad. You are not capable of making an assessment like that about anybody unless, of course, he's a swaggerilla stereotype. He ain't got nothing else but swag, and he tall. And in other words, they think Jonathan Owens, but taller and without the actual talent or self-discipline to develop the talent. Think that. Visually speaking, maybe, no, actually, he's too pale. So no, not even him. Just, those type dudes. The buck Negroes of whom you require nothing. For whom you bend over and whom you beg not to pull out. Those dudes. You start looking at them, and all of a sudden, you can find nuance and you can find balance in what they're doing. When somebody with sense pulls you off to the side and says, girl, that man ain't got no ambition, nothing, no skill. He has no development that will help him to provide. And you like, but he actually got good. Then you start looking for good things to justify that. When in reality, you don't want to sit up and say, but girl, he tall and he got them eyes and he can slang the ding-a-ling right. And even then, half the time, his sex game ain't no different than a man that's more responsible. Not much. And you just like, but it's, you actually enjoy his sex game more because he's not responsible. And you don't have the decency or even the self-awareness to say something like this to yourself. So you definitely aren't going to have the decency and honesty to say this to the one that has some sense and tries to advise you. And the next thing you know, you calling her a stuck-up bitch because she had the decency to tell you as a friend what he wasn't and how everybody else can see it except you. How the hell? And you proud of it. You boast about this. You brag about this. Girl. What you do is you boast and you brag about the guys that did what you would have said they're supposed to do, and your mom would have told them they're supposed to do. And your dad would have demanded of them if you had one. And a lot of you did. Or your loving uncle would have demanded of a man. You look at those guys that actually fit these criteria, and you are so proud of yourself for not giving them a chance. When you need to brag about how somebody wants you but can't have you, then you start bragging about how those dudes want you but can't get you. When you talk about the attention that you get that you don't reciprocate and you're bragging to your friends and making it up, even if you're making it up, that's the one whom you have in mind when you're making up your stories. And that's the one about whom you're telling the truth when you tell the truth. But the arrest of the Yankee and the UK sisters in Kerobokan in Bali, Indonesia, told us everything. Told us all we need to know. I mean, they were picked up for questioning even then, but then apparently they must have been told, don't try to leave. They were arrested when they got ready to board a flight. What the hell does that tell you? If they had not gone to the airport and they sat and waited, they probably would not have been picked up. That's what that tells me. And now they're being paraded. An example is being made out of them. And here's the thing about Indonesia, and I think I stated this before. Indonesia does not pick on people. They grab foreigners all the time. They grab locals all the time for committing crimes against foreigners. They're willing to protect everybody that is within their jurisdiction. If you are a visitor and a local comes after you and there's evidence to that effect, they're going to look into it. And when the evidence shows that your report is true, they're going to grab that person. They might grab them on your report and then investigate to decide to keep them. Now, they had to let these women go because it wasn't actually considered a major crime. But trying to leave, they're like, oh, hell no. Not only that, but the shop owner even said, I actually ain't worried about the money. I want the message to be sent. It's the owner of the shop that got to decide this matter. And the owner of the shop said to the police, grab them. I'm going to pursue this. Forget the money. I don't even want the money back. I want them in court and facing the charges that the law has on the books. I want them to face the penalties that are written down in the codes. What does that tell you? This means that he was sick and tired of this before. And as I've stated, you already have a bad image globally. Those of you that are not guilty have to suffer for those of you who are. And Indonesians are very sweet people. You can ask African American Muslims. There are quite a few African American Muslims that are married to Indonesians. They're generally a very sweet group of people. The Malaysians and the Filipinos are known for their good manners and being nice and fair to everybody and not being discriminatory. As a matter of fact, as I've stated before, one of the ironies of this is that they were taken to the Bandung police station for questioning. Bandung is where the first conference was held by different groups of people with melanin to discuss the problem they had in common, which is that white man, the colonizer. Representatives were from different parts of Africa and Asia, and this is back when they were still colonies. Roughly a decade to a decade and some change before they began to become independent of Zadi. Bandung. You can ask Indonesians about that right now. What does Bandung mean? And that's what it is. Oh, yeah, the Filipinos ain't the only black folks of Southeast Asia, or the only black folks of Asia, I should say. They ain't the only ones. They're Indonesians that would rather be black than, you don't believe it, but yeah, there are people in Indonesia that would rather be black than be white. You call them black and they take it as a compliment. Kind of like somebody else y'all have heard before. Tell some of them Indonesians, hey, man, I'm glad you're here. Boy, that glare from these lights was bothersome. Glad you're here to darken the room a little bit, and if they understand it, they might grin from ear to ear. Kind of like me. I wore all black to work yesterday. Somebody cracked a joke and said, hey, yo, black, you naked? The only thing I had white button, my everything was black, but the buttons on my shirt were white. I turned around. I said, that was kind of a good one, man. And then he saw the white buttons. He said, oh, either those are buttons on the shirt or you painted them on. Painted them on your skin. What's going on? He was joking, obviously, but it was a compliment. That's how he meant it, and that's how I took it. They got folks in Indonesia that would have that same outlook on it. It's not a racist place. They didn't pick on them because they're black women. Black women are getting a bad reputation. I actually feel sorry for the ones that come from Tanzania, northern Nigeria, Somalia, Sudan, that don't have these attitudes and have to deal with them. The blowback from what the sisters in southern Nigeria and the UK and the US and maybe some of the Anglophone Caribbean islands, if they go to visit there, have to deal with. I feel bad for them. You are showing the world your tail. And brothers, I'm going to say this to y'all about Thailand right quick. You know why it is that they go to Thailand? I'll tell you why it is they go. There are those who go just to visit because it's beautiful. They do exist. There are those who go because they found some sort of work there, some sort of job to do, and it's probably not permanent, but they found it. There are those who go for these reasons. But one of the reasons they will go by choice is because Thailand is developed. It's got the infrastructure. Same reason why they'll go to Bali. These are tourist spots. And they're willing to go to these places largely because, you know what? You've given them publicity. You and the Passport Joes have given them publicity, given Thailand publicity. But in more recent years, you've given publicity to our folks. So the women from the same wombs as us and from whose wombs we come are deciding, you know what, we gonna go to. In other words, because it is developed and because it is nice to visit, and if you live there, it's good to live in too, they're going. Now, whether they're going to ruin things for you or not varies from one to the next, as we know. But if you hadn't helped to make it what it was, and make no bones about it, they would have been swept under they would have actually been swept up by the expansion of you know what, a particular form of government. If it hadn't been for them bloods in the U.S. Army containing a particular threat in Vietnam at the behest of Zaddy, Thailand, I'm pretty sure, would have been swept up too. Because that particular form of government did away with monarchies. That's what people don't realize. Yeah, they did something to monarchies. That form of government is actually more against monarchies than democracy is, or democratic republics. Where's the royal family of Russia today? Don't know. Where's the royal family of the UK? There's still a royal family. Without political power, there's still a royal family. Diplomatic immunity when they visit other places, all that stuff. Titles, fortune, everything. Thailand is a kingdom. It was in the sights of that particular form of government, and it was poor whites and them bloods in the army. And I don't mean Crip killers. I'm talking about just African American men. Or as they would say in Vietnam, we done. And it's the funny thing, because in Vietnamese and Thai, dan is the word for black. Now, dan in the Malay language means and. But in their language, it means black. Brothers, take pride in the fact that you are direct cause of the attractiveness of Thailand to many people around the world as a place to go and visit to this day. You are. And I'm not even bragging about how we fought for Mass and fought for Zaddy. What I'm saying is that our efforts have had a positive effect. And truth be told, that's one of the places where a lot of this understanding that we were victims came from. We have more understanding of being victims of white supremacy in South Asia, Southeast Asia, than what we have even on our own continent sometimes, depending on which part of the continent you visit. Yeah, gentlemen. They are showing everybody. Now, initially, and this is another reason they're going to Thailand, those who are going to ruin things for you and me have another reason that they're going there specifically. When sisters were talking on Oprah, they were talking to American media. They were mainly just trying to repeat the propaganda to America that we ain't fit. They weren't interested in telling the UK, telling Mexico, telling Colombia, but they weren't interested in telling people in these countries that we ain't fit. That was not their steal. That wasn't their goal. They weren't thinking about the rest of the world. When Hollywood made movies depicting us as the bad guy or the loyal Negro sub-hero, they weren't interested. Well, actually, some of them were interested in the propaganda to the rest of the world. It served a purpose, and it kind of worked for a while. But now sisters have realized that internationally speaking, people at least are willing to say, they're willing to take a look at us and see and then say out loud if Hollywood's 80s movies were right about us or not. If the 70s movies were right about us or not. And what they're pretty much saying is, no, we ain't evil. I got one student that speaks hood English a lot. His nickname is Hood Hassan because I asked him, where did you learn some of this? And he said, from the hood. I was like, did you grow up in the States really? He said, no, I'm talking about the hood movies. Man, those are the best movies. And that's where he learned a lot of his English. I had to teach him formal English. He could speak English, but I had to teach him how to speak it in a formal manner that was better for professional purposes. I had to teach this. Another student specialized in 70s slang. He started researching it because he heard Hood Hassan, and he decided, well, let me see about the slang from a few decades ago. So he would interrupt stuff in class. I would think he had a serious question, and he would say, Mr. Black, have you ever heard somebody say this? And he would bust out with stuff, sometimes even from the 40s and the 50s, like the fuzz as a code for the police, or hip to, meaning aware of, knowing about. He even said, drop a dime. He said, hey, are you hip to the meaning of drop a dime? Okay, look, man. And that's actually pretty old slang. I said, hey, man, hold up. Am I hip to it? Who taught you about that? He was looking it up during class time. They don't really want to talk like Massa and Zaddy. So that means they know we're not evil. And sisters are aware of this. Tell you another reason. And they're going to try to come to the Middle East if they can. They'll try it. That's one of the reasons I do kind of fear the Middle Eastern nations, the Gulf nations, becoming more lenient in their enforcement of certain laws and their punishment of certain laws. That's one of the reasons I worry about this. Sisters that are coming here to work can see this. They watch this. Sometimes when we, black men, are moving around in the malls here, whether we are American, Nigerian, Black, Saudi, or any mix thereof, especially when we're in groups, women stare. I've been out with one. Sometimes I was with Mr. Hausawi. Other times I was with B Deep in the mall in Riyadh. Shouts out to you, bro. Assalamu alaikum. You know what? I forgot to send you those words of the day. I'm sorry, man. Let me get to that. But sometimes I'll be with one, sometimes I'll be with the other. In both cases, non-black women will be looking. I've been out with my partners from Nigeria back when I lived in the old city before I went to Riyadh. They be looking. And there was a situation here where a Nigerian doctor got a Saudi woman pregnant. He skipped the country. He thought she was going to leave and join him. I worry about this because I worry about the way that the country is becoming a bit more lenient and the nations next door, because this is going to make it easier for sisters to have the courage to come here. And what are they going to do when they show up? They can see this happening. One Saudi woman was getting ready for her wedding. It was at her engagement party. She was she about to get married. My current co-teacher's mother was invited, so he was invited to the men's portion of the party. But he did get a chance at the time when he was still walking his mom somewhere inside the party. She came and she met his mom, and therefore met him by extension. And she said to his mother, I just love black men. And she was getting ready to marry a non-black Saudi. This is known. What are they looking for here? I'm talking about the non-black women here. They want that black bodyguard look. That's what they're looking for. If you're a brother and you doing some weight training in the gym and you keep a neat haircut, they checking for you. You think that sisters can't see this? To be told the truth, I was kind of shocked when I heard how similar the situation was here. Black Saudi women will see white or bronze non-black Arab women flirting with or batting their eyes at black men, and they'll get upset. But the black Saudi women want to get a non-black man if they can. One is much easier than the other. That used to be that if there was a child that was mixed, the assumption was mom's black, dad's not, and she's not really the favorite wife. That was the assumption back then. Guess what it is now? Now you see a little mixed kid, if you know that they're mixed, because Arabs in general look like that. But if you see that one is, then pretty much it is that the dad is black and the mom's not. That's what you're seeing. Now it's understood. Because these white dudes, or white Arabs, as they consider themselves, ain't checking for sisters in many cases. There are some where it happens. People are shocked to see me with my wife. They don't know that we're both black at times. They're kind of shocked. Then they hear me speak. Oh, okay. Some of them think, well, maybe he grew up with black folks. And others think, okay, he's a light-skinned brother. But they stare at times. Even in Riyadh, they don't stare as often, but they might do a double take, and then they stop. Smaller places, they look and stare like, oh my God, am I seeing this right? What the? In Jeddah, not so much. No, they're not. Brothers, that's what you're dealing with. And see, they know that, see, it's like this. Stateside, they couldn't do what they wanted to do. They wanted to make you undesirable stateside so that they could double bill. They could go to Zaddy, and then they could also fall back on you. Always trying to fall back on one or the other to get everything they wanted except them draws. That was where they would pick just a few. The few Zaddies they could get and a few brothers that they would have. And they were willing to share it, and we already know that. But they've been trying to double bill. Always fall back and always go to one or the other. Play one against the other. Well, Zaddy's late this month with the trinkets that they promised. Go to Zaddy. Well, you know these brothers ain't fit because they don't never work. No, it's never, you don't hire them unless you're going to pay them crap. It's always, they just don't work. So they wanted to be able to do that. And it didn't work as well as they wanted it to work, even within the states. What happened within the states is, let's be honest, they pretty much saw the Wyatt woman as their competition. Then they began to realize that really she wasn't the competition. It was Maria and Marisol and sometimes Mei-Ling. I'm not going to say Ling Ling because that does sound derogatory, but Mei-Ling sounds more realistic. And you get the idea. A matter of fact, I only say Mei-Ling. That's actually Mandarin. They weren't the ones that were trying to be that competition. It wasn't them. Oh, no. No, it was the Southeast Asian ones. A little browner, a little thicker. It was them. They saw what was going on. They realized what was happening. I mean, to be honest with you, I was actually approached by one from Vietnam, and she was thick. Now, in a few years, she was going to be just too mother cuss word big, but she was thick. We were supposed to go out at some point. Now, I wound up having to do laundry, and I couldn't make it. I didn't have any other option at that point. I was young. I didn't have my own washing machine. Not in that new city in which I was living. I wasn't Muslim then. But one thing I was not, I was aware of what a woman's religion was. I did not want a woman that believed in more than one God. And I didn't want a Catholic. Didn't matter that my mother's family was largely Catholic. I wasn't looking for a Catholic woman because I could see the incompatibility. I just was not willing to risk conceiving someone that was going to be beholden to the Pope. And well, fortunately now, none of my children are. That's another story. But she hit me up. And I respect her for that kind of courage. A lot of you don't realize that. My son's mother asked me for my number. To this day, I respect her for that kind of courage. She doesn't know that I do, but I do. She thinks I don't, but that wasn't her mistake. I'm not going to tell you all what it is, but that wasn't her error. I'm going to tell you now this. Where I'm going with all of this, land is plain. When they realized what their competition and who their competition was, they were specifically hoping that we were not going to start looking at actually going to these places. So when the U.S. began to have its own push factors to push us away, Then we found out what reasons there were to enjoy living in some of these other places from which these ladies came, and sisters panicked. A lot of sisters actually kind of liked when COVID came and flights were grounded. They somewhat looked forward to that. They were like, oh, this is great. And when the U.S. passport became worthless for a summer, they said, oh, man, that's excellent. Some of them were happy about that. They weren't as aware of Passport Bros and SYSBM back in 2020, but they were beginning to be. Kevin Samuels, we already know, was not, well, at that time, he was beginning to pivot to the right direction. 2021, he went mainstream. And at that point, COVID did not ground a whole lot of flights. The U.S. passport was back to what it was before then. So what wound up being the case? Very simply put, as you know, sisters began to realize, damn, we're losing the men that can afford to get on a flight. The men who have skills that are in demand in other places on the planet, they're going to be the ones that we lose. We can't have that. So in a nutshell, what they tried domestically, stateside, they wound up realizing that they failed, and now they're trying to make sure that they don't fail internationally, but it's already too late. That's what you were seeing when it is a sister that went to Thailand or anywhere else to try to ruin things. That's what you're seeing. Now, for the ones that are there for other reasons, and right now there still are a fairly large number that are there for other reasons, that's what you're seeing. But see, these places, man, understand, they're going to go where the men have developed things. That's where they go. They still ain't going to no urban parts of Indonesia. I mean, rural parts of it. They ain't going there. They ain't going to no villages where people live in them long huts. I shouldn't call them huts, but those long homes. I forgot the names of them, but where you got several families that live in this long hallway, or where they live in houses raised up above the ground, not only due to flooding, but also because Komodo dragons would just walk into their homes and start grabbing them. So they got these ladders. They ain't going there. Or even where you got these folks that live on the coastline and they actually live right over the water and they can see underwater and hold their breath for long periods of time because they've been doing it for so many generations. Sisters ain't trying to go there. They ain't interested. They don't want to hear it. They're not interested in those places. What they want to do is create a situation in which you only will have those places to go. What they don't understand is that even if they succeeded and the only place where we could go and not run into misandry and feminism with these areas, we'd probably adjust. As long as we could keep in touch with each other, I think we would adjust well. It may take a while, but I mean, hell, they're already, look at the stages, the steps, step by step, what they're already pushing for. What are the results? See where this is going? That's what we're facing, gentlemen. They pushed for this. They fought for this. And now they're getting this. And we're just frustrating them at every turn. Naturally, they're pissed the uck off. So, I'm going to state this about Simone Biles before I go. What a lot of you sisters don't understand is that what Simone Biles did is exactly what every single effing one of you should have to do, even to get just a plumber. And I only say just a plumber because of what they are in your eyes. They make good money. I wouldn't do the work, but their salaries are not that bad. They make better livings than what you would think. But since you don't like them, then you should have to do what Simone Biles did just to get that, what you don't like. And even when they don't make much money, in order for you to get a black man, that is what you should have to do. Slide in their DMs. Go get them. Try to convince them to look at you. You should not be able to get a black man, even if he ain't decent, without making the effort. Despite the fact that it has not been all of you that have done this, the fact remains that collectively speaking, you have earned this. And those of you that did not earn this individually still did not go far enough in calling out the rest. The female accountability spaces, the female accountability space is new and it is small and it is developing, but it is late. It should have been started a long time ago. And you knew you knew what your silence meant. You knew the lies that the bad women were telling, and you knew what your silence meant. And some of you, while refusing to misbehave beyond a certain point, was still in on the deception and on the lies about what women want and what women don't want and what men need to know how to do and not know how to do. And a lot of y'all were still in on that. You did not have the decency to tell the men these B words are lying. You laugh at guys who didn't know any better. You do that, but to actually say to the men, listen, this is what they're lying about on TV and in your house. And if your mama tells you different, she lying too. You didn't do that. And this is why it is that what Simone Biles did, especially after she got what a zaddy from Brazil, is what you should have to do. She had to do the reach back to a certain extent. Shouts out to Accountability Commentary for that. But since she was willing to go since she was willing to play in the snow for a bit in order to get a brother, she should have had to do that. And I think it is important that we note that since he didn't know who she was, he didn't know about her playing in the snow. And that's important too. It is important that we realize as well that if he had known she was playing in the snow, he would have had every right to say, this ain't gonna work, and to not answer her back. He validated her. He respected her. He appreciated her. He said what she said. He did that. He confirmed her side of the story, which is that she slid in the DMs that she wanted. She was one of those, go get them type women. She went after everything else in life that she wanted. She didn't do what most of you would do, which is go after everything else in life you want except the man, just so that you can sit up and tell the man how much you don't need him, even when you want him, because you got to play the game. She didn't do that. She was consistent. God bless her for that. Her dad walked her down that aisle. Jonathan was waiting at the altar crying. That means he understood and appreciated. He wasn't crying because he was a bitch. He was crying because he did understand and appreciate how things had worked out in his favor. And he credited her with helping him to know how to make better decisions and to overcome paralysis by analysis. He said these good things about her. He did everything he was supposed to do according to your own rules. So since you still got something to say about him, the only thing you were really upset about is that he values himself. And if he was as humble as you want him to be, you would then lose respect for him for that. And you would say, he don't have no self-confidence. He ain't no real N-word. A real N-word will brag by himself. It's himself, dummy, but you know how y'all talk. You insist, and this is what Edward and I mean when we say that you can't ever make a positive assumption about a brother. No matter what he did, no matter what he said, you were going to have something to say about it. You don't respect men who aren't full of themselves, and you don't respect black men when they are. You might give them a pass if they're bald-headed and abundantly melanated, and hell, half the time, even then you wouldn't. There's really nothing else to it. And if you have a problem with someone valuing themselves, it is because you hate them. And more so than hating them, you hate them so much that you can't see why they shouldn't hate themselves. That's a serious hatred. That's proof of that. You should all be Simone Biles. It doesn't mean you should get what she got. You should just have to do what she did to have a shot at what she got. That's what I mean. You have earned this collectively. And to the individuals amongst you who have not only not earned this collectively, but have actually stood against the lying and the deception and the dual mating strategy and the paternity fraud and the hybristomania, I mean actually stood against it, hats off to you. I know your voices have been silenced, so those of you who have done these things would not even be known to many of us unless you go on YouTube and do it. What I would say to you, though, to you ladies that are doing this, understand, if you are doing this and you come across another lady that is doing the same thing, you cannot afford to fight with each other. You may have misunderstandings, and that's probably going to be what they are, but you cannot afford to fight with each other if you were on the same team as far as that is concerned. As it is, as it already stands, because of what you have not challenged. Well, I'm sorry, because of what you have challenged, but how much you were not able to make much noise. And I'm not blaming you if you couldn't, as long as you tried, but because of what you have challenged and how unchallenged it was by others than you, the fact is that a lot of young brothers are already, it's too late for a lot of young brothers, young guys, and even some elders. They are learning to not want black women on the basis of their blackness. It started with the attitude, but after a while, they're going to start looking and saying, well, you know what? It's the 4C hair for me, and the skin tone, and the nose, and the lips. I don't want that. That's what it is. It's already gone that far with the young guys. Some of the elders, yeah, but for the most part, yeah, from the young guys, the ones that are not at that point now, they're being conditioned to that point. So I want you to not go at each other's throats about other stuff as much as you can help it. For your own good. I hope that what I've said has been a benefit. I thank you all for listening again. And as always, black heart, black mind, black out, assalamu alaikum, black, heterosexual, non-selective male power just because they don't like it in black, patriarchy until extinction or judgment day. Thank you again for flying with us on Jet Black Airways, where jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Oh, and this time I will ask that you do both on your way out of the Jet Black aircraft once we dock at the gate. Press that Cash App button and punch in numbers. It will be easier for you later on. But that also you click on the link to the merchandise and get at least a long sleeve shirt or a short sleeve t-shirt for either Passport Bros or SYSBM, so that you may identify each other in your transit and abroad. Gender, justice, forever.